history is. And Tom and I will get to that number one guy here in a minute. But Tom, let's talk about our punters. Let's get them started off, brother. Where do you want to start?
Let's go with number 5, the original punter, the first Bengals punter ever, Dale Livingston. Paul Brown drafted him. He was actually in 1968. He was the kicker and the punter. Paul Brown believed in using his kickers or punters for more than one thing, particularly his punters. But he, as a kicker, kicked the first extra point, kicked the first field goal in Bengals history, and did a solid job as a punter. He was the AFL Bengals punter and was let go in 1970, but did a solid job. And as you can tell there, had one of the cooler football cards a punter can have.
Yeah, I've got that whole set of those cards, that gas station, the Tressler Comet cards. I've got that whole set from 69. But yeah, only played in 68 and 69, third round pick out of Western Michigan. And like you said, he kicked the first extra point. That was a touchdown scored by Paul Robinson in the very first game in 1968.
Against the Chargers.
Let's go. Who do we got at number 4, Tom?
Dave Lewis. A little bit more of an interesting guy. He came from very humble beginnings, very smart guy, hard work through school, got a scholarship to Stanford, and he was actually the quarterback at Stanford as well. And like I said, Paul believed in using his punters for more than one reason. So he's kind of the third string quarterback. But when he came in 1970 to the Bengals, he had been drafted by the Giants, never signed with the NFL, went to the Montreal Alouettes. When he ended up with the Bengals in 1970, think about this. First 2 years in the league, he led the league in punting. He was an all-pro punter in 1970. And he threw a couple passes, but was mostly known for his punting. Played for 3 years, left the Bengals, went back to the CFL for a year, and then retired.
Yeah, and I think he played from 70 to 73, obviously quarterback, kicker. But he's the only punter on our list here out of our top 5 that never got a punt block, Tom. He's the only one.
Got a punt block, but also think about this. Think of the money he'd make today. He averaged rookie 46.3 in his second year, 44.2, which back then was unheard of.
Yep. So let's go with number 3 on our list.
Lee Johnson. There he is. Lee kind of he bounced around a little bit before finding a home in Cincinnati. He was a Houston Oiler. Then, believe it or not, he was a Cleveland Brown in 87 and even at the beginning of the Super Bowl year in 88. And really the only reason the Bengals signed him, they had a pretty good punter in Scott Fulhag who was doing a good job, but they weren't happy with how the kickoffs were going, and he was a kickoff specialist. So for a while during the Super Bowl year, they kept 3 guys, and they would watch him punt in practice, and then eventually just out of roster crunch, he became the punter as well. He was also a great holder. I think he might hold the record for longevity as a Bengal. He was a Bengal for about 11 years. Had a record in the Super Bowl, 63-yard punt, which I think still stands.
Yeah, I think I did look at that on Wikipedia and some other stuff. It's 68 yards. It still stands in Super Bowl, the longest punt in Super Bowl history, man. That's crazy. Lee was a unique individual as well off the field, but we won't get into that one. So we're down to our last 2. We got a lot of guesses in here, a lot of Hubers, a lot of Lee Johnsons. Livingston was put in there as the number 1. So we're down to our final 2 here. Who do we have number 2 on our list?
Pat Mcinally, who, again, as a punter, he was, as you guys know, as a guest here, was an All-American wide receiver as well at Harvard, settled in at punter, caught a lot of big passes over the years, including a monster one against the Steelers. But he was an all-pro punter, led the league in punting twice. First time didn't get elected to the Pro Bowl, which is a common problem for Bengal players not getting enough notoriety or press. But was a staple here in town. But just an outstanding punter more than anything else.
And guys, I would challenge everybody, go back to our YouTube archives and look at this and watch this interview. Maybe one of the top 5, maybe top 10 interviews we've ever done. And we're going to be going back and doing our top 10 come New Year's Eve edition. We'll kind of share that but one of the funniest stories in Bengal football history is him walking into a meeting after a night of having some partying and Forrest Gregg is getting ready to light up the team. And and Pat McInally walks in a little bit late to the meeting, buck naked with socks, a hat, and a belt, and something like some wristbands on, buck naked. Totally, everybody starts cracking up, laughing hysterically. And Forrest Gregg started laughing himself, and pretty much the players that were in that room that talked to us about that situation said that Lee Johnson saved their ass that day.
Paul Brown had been there, and Paul did have a sense of humor, but I think if Paul Brown had been there and Pat would have walked in like that, Paul would have told him to keep walking.
I know Mike Brown was not very happy about that. I do recall that. Put that back up there, Jamie. It is I almost put in an honorable mention for this. So we put up some videos of that 1986 Monday Night Football game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jeff Hayes, who was really not a very good punter, I think he had gotten a bunch of punts blocked, or very short punts. He took off for like a 60, 70-yard punt. Ran it back for a touchdown.
Stumbling like a drunk the last 10 yards into the end zone too.
Yeah, we posted that video multiple times. That's one of the classic. That has to be the longest touchdown run by a punter in NFL history. But that was almost a game winner for the Bengals in that '86 game.
Hey, the other thing too, Mike is hanging around in the chat, but we had Pat McInally on the show. Remember, he's the one that invented the starting lineup figures as well. That was when you go back and watch that show, he kind of gave us behind the scenes scoop on how that all went down. So that was a pretty cool story.
And make sure when you look, if you have your starting lineups and still have them into boxes, hopefully, if you turn around on the backhand side, James and I look at these things all the time.
You got it somewhere. Yeah,
there's a little football in the bottom right-hand corner. They really never officially gave Pat credit for that. Now he got paid off these things, but in the bottom right-hand corner of every starting lineup box in the back is a football with a number 87 in it. That was their homage to Pat McInally. And let's let James show you that.
Let's see where the camera is. There it is.
There it is.
There. Yeah.
There's the 87. That is the closest they got. Kenner Toys had gotten to giving Pat McInally credit for inventing this.
All right, he didn't seem to mind though. He said the check's cashed. So
yeah, that's right.
The check cleared. He was.
Yeah, good stuff. So we're down to our number one kicker in Cincinnati Bengals history, and this is his 11th year in Cincinnati. Unbelievable. University of Cincinnati zone. Tom, who's our number one on our list?
Give me 1 sec here, guys.
A little bit of the future.
I'm sorry, Jamie. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. I had a little bit.
Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry. Our number one on our list.
You don't have to go into the past. You can look at the present and the future. It's Kevin Huber, left-footed, University of Cincinnati. Has been there a long time. Pro Bowl. I think what most impresses me about Kevin isn't just how effective he is, the hang time he gets, but he has an incredible knack of knocking it just not inside the 20, but inside the 10 and getting the ball to die. I mean, he doesn't hit head for the coffin corner. He hits – that's Fat Randy. That won't be
That's a bad joke,
I
baby.
wanted to make sure that you guys were paying attention.
I like how Tom called him Fat Randy. He's not Randy Bullock. That is just Fat Randy.
Jim has ruined that with those T-shirts.
Oh my gosh! Damn
that backfired on me. That took way too long to get up. So
that's funny. That's funny.
The Bengals have had some great special teams players play with Kevin, but it's no coincidence. Return yardage against his punts is always at the bottom of the league. You know, the Bengals coverage teams on punts are always at the top of the league. Return yardage is very, very low, and it's a large part for him. It's how he kicks the ball, how he works in the offseason condition, and he's also a class act, which is good for a local boy. But in our opinion, I think he's the number one punter in Bengals history.
Yeah, and Tom and I agreed on every one of these picks, by the way. And what's crazy about this, listen to these numbers. Like, he's number one in total punt yards, over 40,000 punt yards. He's number one as the longest punt in Bengals history. Multiple punters have had the same number, but a 75-yard punt return or punt is the longest in Bengals history. 45.2 yards punt per average is number one in career in Bengals history. 897 punts is number one, And because obviously longevity gets you to some of these numbers, but 186 games is the most ever played by a Bengals punter in Cincinnati Bengals history. So Kevin Huber's a class act, Cincinnati kid. I think he's got a few more years left in him too, Tom.
Oh, I do too. And hopefully they're all here.
That's right.
And, the one thing about you, we mentioned the name Kevin Huber, and his stats speak for himself. In the league, 11 years, ranked first in Bengals and this, that, and whatever category. But that poor hit he took that night in Pittsburgh, where he got his jaw broken, was just you just hate to see that, and especially against the Steelers. And man, he toughened it out and came back.
I need to pull Mike back on. I'm thinking I'm getting pissed again. I need counsel.
But man, that was just a bad deal.